Hey there, everybody. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Ranking the Albums alongside, after quite a while, Dr. Poppy Jazz himself, Mr. Mike Antonelli. What's
Thank
going
you,
on,
Pete.
my friend?
Great. I'm doing great, and welcome to my humble stage.
We are actually on the Antonelli property as we speak, on the stage. This used to be at the brewery at Orange County Hops,
Yeah.
which Mike no longer owns.
Yeah.
You've moved on to other things. You want to kind of fill people in on what you've been doing since they saw you last?
Well, yeah, I've been doing a couple of recording projects. I'm really involved with a good friend of mine who was somebody that I met during my time at the brewery, and we teamed up and we're making a bunch of music now together. His name is Bill Ware,
Yep.
vibraphonist, composer, of his claim to fame, so to speak, was that he performed on the road with Steely Dan for 2 years in the 90s, and we did some recording with them. So we're having a great time making music together. It's not in the jazz vein. I'm sure, if your followers have seen it. You reviewed the album on
When was that?
on the last show that I was even connected to with that, and I just so happen to have something here. That the album is called "The Last Restaurant."
Here we go.
The Last Restaurant, Home at Last, and
Now on vinyl, guys.
it's now on vinyl, and we'll have to work out how you can get it because I don't really have it available in any stores or anything like that. But perhaps Pete and I can work something out if you're interested. It's a collector's edition, 180 gram vinyl. There's 9 tunes on here. So if you're interested, let Pete know. And Pete, that's for you. That's your copy.
Oh, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. So
Yeah.
there you have it. So for those of you who maybe missed the review that I did back in, what was it, October, Mike?
I think, yeah.
October.
Yeah, actually, October.
It's just look up Home at Last here on the channel, do a search, and you'll see the review. And if you are interested, should I just have them get in touch with me and then
We'll figure out the details or whatever, but I have to figure out how to do that.
You still have the Bandcamp page, though, for downloads?
Yes,
right?
for
digital,
downloads, yes.
okay.
Bandcamp is still active.
Okay.
And then you can listen to it anywhere that you normally
Stream
listen to YouTube, of course. Spotify has a campaign for us right now, and iTunes and all the rest of that. It's everywhere.
Cool.
32 countries now it's been streamed in. So,
There you go.
yeah, we're getting there.
Taking over the world, right?
So
And this is so for those of you who might be wondering, this used to be the stage. It's like a trailer, and this used to be the stage where the bands played at the brewery. And Mike basically just brought it back to his house, and you'll see there that is a signed Asia print from Roger Dean himself that I donated to Mike, as well as a signed print of the Allman Brothers "Where It All Begins" from Johannes. So that's forever going to be on the stage here as long as Mike has it. And there's all sorts of other cool little things in here as well.
oh, don't worry, it's not going anywhere. It's Home at Last.
Home at Last. There you go. There you go. Cool. So Mike and I, actually, we've been talking about doing this show for a long time, back when we were doing Miles Davis shows, early part of the pandemic, or even before the pandemic. And we've always talked about potentially doing a John Coltrane show one day. So when Mike and I kind of reconnected a couple months ago, I brought it back into the play and said, we need to get back and do that Coltrane show. So originally we were thinking, well, do we do a top 5? And then I said, well, why don't we do a top 10 of Coltrane albums, our favorite Coltrane albums as a leader, and then I gave us both the flexibility to include at least 1 or possibly 2 live albums in that top 10. So that's what we've done.
That's it? 2? Only 2?
Well, you could do more if you want.
No.
Yeah. There's so many of them, I know, right? Yeah. I have 1.5, without giving too much away. I have 1.5 in
All
mind.
right.
So,
I'm not going to give anything away.
okay, all right, until we get started. So we've ranked them from 10 to 1. Really difficult, right? Because, so many of these classic albums are classic for a reason. But it was good to kind of go back through a lot of these and just kind of rank them. We had, when I announced the show the other day, one of our viewers said, well, how could you possibly do a top 10? Have you listened to every single album that he ever did as a leader? And I'm like, I don't know if there's anybody out there who actually has ever done that. I know. Yes, I certainly
There's
have.
one person.
There you go. That person.
This is, to me, the definitive biography of John Coltrane. It is a a fantastic read, published by Michigan Press, and it's authored by a good friend of mine, Dr. Lewis Porter, who is a jazz educator, a musicologist, a wonderful piano player, and he used to play saxophone as well. So anyway, this is a great biography on Coltrane, and when you get finished reading this book, you'll think you know Coltrane. I mean, that's how good it is. It's an easy read, and it's really in-depth interviews with lots of musicians that Dr. Porter had the privilege of meeting and discussing Coltrane's work with, and there's a lot of great insights about Coltrane's life, his health, his family, all of it. It's all in here. It's called John Coltrane, His Life and His Music by Dr. Lewis Porter.
Nice. Very cool. So with all that being said, we'll get started on number 10. Why don't we do 2 in a row, Mike, so we can kind of get through
Okay,
them.
so you want to get 10
you
and
do 10 and 9.
10 and 9.
Yeah.
All right, so my number 10 here is a recording from Prestige Recordings that John Coltrane did, mostly with music by Tommy Flanagan. And you'll notice that in my picks, I spent a lot of time deciding who was going to be where, but I really wanted to include as many musicians, sidemen, many different band combinations that Coltrane used, and that's kind of the basis for my picks, notwithstanding that I picked a lot of things that were in my personal record collection.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's
because I'm
know
familiar
them the best,
with,
yeah,
right.
Them the
So
best, right, sure.
so basically, this is my favorite 10 based on my collection and other. Of course, I've listened to a lot of Coltrane, but so this is one. It's a dual set. It's Kenny Burrell and John Coltrane. Tunes Why Was I Born, Big Paul for Paul Chambers, Freight Train, I Never Knew, L'Resto, Minor Mishaps, starts side 3, How Long Has This Been Going On, a Gershwin tune, Eclipso, and then on side 4, Soloseum and Tommy's Time. Most of the music was either a standard or written by Tommy Flanagan, a great pianist. And this features John Coltrane on guitar, the great John Coltrane tenor sax.
Plays guitar too?
Yeah, no. The great Kenny Burrell, I was looking at his name, on guitar, Tommy Flanagan piano, Paul Chambers, and Jimmy Cobb.
That's a great lineup.
So it's a great lineup. That's sides 1 and 2. And I didn't know if we were allowed to do compilations or not, but I did because, this is a reissue, of course. Comes from 2 albums, and that's the way you pick the best Coltrane albums, is to pick a dual record, which comes from maybe 2 or 3 different releases. So that's how I kind of squeezed them all together. But on sides 3 and 4, it's Idris Suleiman on trumpet, Coltrane, and Tommy Flanagan, Kenny Burrell, Doug Watkins on bass, and Lewis Hayes on drums with Coltrane. I kind of like that combination of Lewis Hayes, and there's a few recordings with Coltrane with Lewis Hayes. Anyway, this is one of my favorites.
What's really cool about doing this whole exercise is seeing how many albums that I was really familiar with, where you would have like on one side of the vinyl one lineup, and on side 2 another side, another lineup, which is pretty neat.
So this is like, Coltrane. This is 1958. This one is when it was recorded and released, and I believe that in the period from 1957. And I'll get to that a little bit later. From 1957 to 1960 was one of the most prolific periods for Coltrane. Just that 3-year window, he did so much, and so many different things happened for him, and he progressed and changed in so many different directions. But I'll save some of that for later. So that's number 10. Number 9.
All right.
Later in his career, this is with the classic Coltrane quartet of McCoy Tyner, Jimmy Garrison, and Elvin Jones. And this one is called John Coltrane and Johnny Hartman. It is a collection of ballads, of standard ballads. really a great listen. And the combination of Coltrane and Hartman, they went into the studio cold. They didn't know what they were going to play. And it's almost like a jam session from what I read. They went in there and they said, okay, what are we going to do? And they didn't even, have the music or anything. They just put out some lyrics. And he says, I could sing this, I could sing that. And in a November day in 1963, they went in and this is what they came out with. One Day. Beautiful, beautiful record. If you're into the romantic side of John Coltrane, beautiful, beautiful record. A great vocal job by Johnny Hartman. So that's my number 9.
A lot of good collaborations in his discography. I've noticed. I mean, it's just so much. All right, my number 10. I figured let me get the live album started off with my number 10, and I'll stick to mostly studio stuff. So I went with Live at the Village Vanguard from 1962. Terrific. So this one came out on Impulse Records, produced by Bob Thiele, who worked with John quite a bit during this time period. Recorded it in November 1961 at the Village Vanguard in New York City. Really cool lineup. You got Eric Dolphy on bass clarinet. You got McCoy Tyner, Jimmy Garrison, Elvin Jones, as well as Reggie Workman on bass. So you got the 2 bass players on here. Awesome set. Starts off with Spiritual, which is very, very cool. Intoxicating, dreamy kind of jazz. You got Softly as in the Morning Sunrise, which is playful, kind of quirky, and then Chasing the Train, which is, about 16 minutes long, and had basically the whole song, for the most part, is this just crazy journey that Coltrane takes you on. Might be some of his most intense playing ever. I can only imagine being in the audience during this recording. Just absolutely going for the jugular playing, and it might be some of the best soloing he's ever captured on tape. I'd argue that if you want to show someone right off the bat the pure fire of Coltrane's playing, doesn't get much better live at the Village Vanguard. Absolutely outstanding. So that's my number 10. And number 9, I'm going to go with Meditations, which... My notes are all crazy. My notes are all starting to want to get old. I took down all the recording dates and everything on these, which I think is kind of key. So Meditations, also Impulse Records. So Coltrane's got like all these record labels he worked with, so he's got like these like chunks of his recorded history. We would go from one to the other to the other. So this again produced by Bob Thiele over at Van Gelder Studios in Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey. Worked a lot with Rudy Van Gelder throughout the years.
Quite a bit.
Yeah. Recorded April 27th and June 1st, 1964. Here you got McCoy Tyner once again on piano, Jimmy Garrison on bass, Elvin Jones and Rashid Ali on drums. So you got 2 drummers on here, and the addition of Pharoah Sanders also on saxophone. So this one, I like this a lot. This might not be for the weak of heart, because it's epic songs, sprawling like improvisations. You got the screaming, dueling sax between Sanders and Coltrane. But I mean, the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost is absolutely incredible. So good. Compassion is a little mellower. Love is absolutely gorgeous. Consequences are really cool tunes, kind of quirky, and then it ends with like Serenity, which kind of like takes you out like on a calmer level. But man, there's some like ebbs and flows of this album that's just absolutely explosive.
Yeah, interesting that you mentioned Pharoah Sanders and there on there. I read a nice passage that from Dr. Porter's book that explained that by 1966, Coltrane was terminally ill, and he didn't even know it. And there was a comment about, how somebody interviewed him and said, "What do you think about how nice is it having Pharoah Sanders in the band?" He goes, "Well, I need him for his strength, because this was around 1965 or 66." He said, "I need a strong player, because sometimes I just don't have it right at the moment." He said, I put on a lot of weight." He was struggling with his weight. Ultimately in 67, he passed from liver cancer, cirrhosis he had.
So this was right before the end.
Yeah, and I mean, when you think about Coltrane's recording career from the time of Miles from 1955 until 1967 when he died, he really didn't do a whole lot in 66 to 67 as compared to what he did between 55 and 60. It was like, the guy lived 20 years of music in a period of 5 years. It's like, a crazy amount of playing.
Yeah.
He would go into the bathroom at the Village Vanguard and practice in the stall when McCoy was soloing, so that he could get ready for what he was going to do. The man was like a consummate mathematician, technician, besides having, this great spiritual component to his music based on his upbringing with the blues and the whole thing that goes with that.
Crazy.
Cool. I didn't want to interrupt you, but
no, not at all.
I had to get that in, otherwise I would have forgotten.
Forgot it. I know, right? Well, it's all relative, right? Because again, we're talking about stuff from the 50s into the early mid 60s,
yeah.
So all sorts of stuff going on in his life. All right, well, I'll turn it back over to you for 8 and 7, I guess.
Okay. Number 8. So I know you said one of the rules was to not include albums where he was not the leader, but I had to include this. This is
I'm flexible, Mike.
This is a real. I know you're not going to fire me just because of that. So this, let's say it's not number 8. This is honorable mention, right? This is the Thelonious Monk Quartet live at the 5 spot, featuring John Coltrane. So his name is on the album, and it's Thelonious Monk piano, John Coltrane tenor sax, Ahmed Abdul Malik on bass, and Roy Haynes.
Oh, wow.
Roy Haynes on the drums. Not to be confused with the other drummer that we mentioned, right? This is Roy Haynes. It was recorded sometime in the late summer of 1967. In the liner notes, it's very interesting. They talk about the circumstances of this recording, and how the normal bass player was a hopeless addict, Wilbur Ware at the time, and didn't show up for the gig, so that's why they had the substitute bass player, Ahmed Abdul Malik, and also Roy Haynes doesn't actually have any listings of being in Monk's quartet, but he was also subbing for Monk's regular drummer at the time. Anyway, the reason I like this is because I never got to see Coltrane live. When he died, I was only 6, so I didn't have the opportunity to see him. But I've always wondered what it would be like sitting in a club with the atmosphere of the club where you can hear people talking and glasses clinking. This was actually reissued on Blue Note Records, but it was recorded on a cassette deck in the room at the 5 spot when Monk had like a 6-month tour there, a residency with Coltrane. And this was one of the nights, they don't figure out exactly when it was. But what's significant to me is Coltrane is just ripping it up here, and it's almost like he's changing gears at this point, and he's going into something completely new than what he was doing with Miles, or he's coming out of a certain phase and going into another one. You can hear it in his playing. He starts off in the set playing really fast and double and triple timing passages, that kind of sheets of sound phrasing that he's known for at that period. And then all of a sudden he gets, towards the end of the set, he gets a little bit more lyrical. This was recorded sometime, like I said, in early fall of 1957. This time with Monk, Coltrane, in the liner notes, when he writes that beautiful poem in A Love Supreme, he mentions that at this time he had an awakening, and this was Coltrane coming out of his drug years. This was the exact, not the exact concert, but exact, period of time within a couple of months that he kicked the habits that he was involved in, and he turned the page, and he tried to live a much better life and a more fruitful existence than where the path he was going down. This is an awakening for Coltrane when he played with Monk. So if you don't have any Coltrane and Monk recordings, check them out. There's a lot of them out there, and this one happens to be like not the best recorded quality, but there's a lot of great stuff in there if you can get past the fact that It's not high fidelity like we're used to today, and it's a little rough sonically, but the material is there.
That's good.
So
That's
my honorable mention. So now I'll get down to number 8. Number 8 is a group with Lewis Hayes, Albert Tootie Heath, 2 different drummers on this recording. Sides number 4 and 5 is Lush Life and I Hear a Rhapsody, 2 standard tunes, and selections 1 through 3 is a trio recording with Arthur Taylor on drums and Earl May on bass. Like Someone in Love, I Love You, and Train's Slow Blues. This was originally, it's one of the Prestige recordings, and it was recorded in August of 1957 and January of 1958. Again, a Rudy Van Gelder recording, and this one is called Lush Life, and there's the info for this. So that's my number 8.
Cool.
My turn again?
Number 7.
Okay, number 7. Recorded in May of 1958. Notice my pattern here. Happened to be one of my favorite years of all time. Pete knows why. I won't get into it with all your viewers. But I'm stuck in 1958. I don't know why. It just, the things from 1958 happened to appeal to me. And I wasn't even alive then, but it's still one of my favorite years. So, this is Coltrane and trumpet player Wilbur Hardin, and it's called Gold Coast, recorded in May of 58 and June of 58. And it's on Savoy Records, okay? Gold Coast is the music when Coltrane started getting into the African rhythms and exploring world music and trying to put elements of the world music into his recordings. And this is still 1958, so it's before all the giant steps and the other recordings from 59 and 60. This is Coltrane exploring the music of the motherland, as he put it. And just a really, really cool album to listen to. It's not really popular, but it's Coltrane being Coltrane, which is another phase of his development. Let's see who's on here. Hard to read here. Wilbur Hardin, flugelhorn. Curtis Fuller on trombone, right? Well, he used Curtis again coming up. Coltrane, Tommy Flanagan again on piano, and Ali Jackson on bass, and Art Taylor drums. He worked with Tommy Flanagan and Art Taylor a lot. So, anyway, Gold Coast, it's the volume 2 of Coltrane and Wilbur Hardin.
You probably got that in the cutout bin at a really good price.
Yeah, some of these I have the prices on them, you'll see, but yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right, that's number 7.
All right. My number 8, I'm going to go with 1964's Crescent from Impulse Records, again produced by Bob Thiele at Van Gelder Studios in Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey, April 27th and June 1st, 1964. McCoy Tyner, Jimmy Garrison, John Coltrane, Elvin Jones. Great band.
The classic.
Really classic band.
Quartet.
The opening title track is awesome. Big, sprawling, epic. Love it. Wise One, really, really cool. A little more laid back and melodic. I love... McCoy Tyner is just amazing on all these albums that he appears on. He's just so good. Very majestic playing. Elvin Jones, terrific drummer. His cymbal work is very, very expressive, which I love quite a bit. Bessie's Blues is really good. Lonnie's Lament is really cool. It's like 12 minutes long, and it's got really good solos from Tyner and Garrison. It's really interesting how on like side 2 of the original LP, Coltrane doesn't take any solos. He lets the bands do it all. And then the last track is the drum thing, and that's all basically a drum solo that leads in with sax and ends with sax. But very, very cool album. Excellent stuff. That's my number 8, and my number 7 is here somewhere. That is going to be kind of, for me, an outlier amongst all these. I really like this album. I know not a lot of people rank this too high when it comes to longtime Coltrane fans, but my favorite things from 1961, Atlantic Records. So this one's on Atlantic Records, produced by Nasuhi Erdogan, and this was recorded shortly after he left Miles' band. And this features Coltrane on soprano and tenor sax. You've also got McCoy Tyner on here, Steve Davis on double bass, and Elvin Jones on drums. This to me is more, you mentioned before, like the romantic, easy listening Coltrane. That's this. But it's gorgeous. His interpretation of My Favorite Things, the title track, is amazing. The piano is just totally spot on. Cole Porter's Every Time We Say Goodbye is just lovely. And then on side 2, you got Summertime by Gershwin, which is really well done. Here, Coltrane switches over to tenor sax, just excellent stuff. And then But Not For Me is all about Davis and Jones, with Jones launching a great little solo towards the end. Beautiful album. This, when I want to listen to easy listening Coltrane, this is the one I reach for. So.
I also read that the tune My Favorite Things, which is a remake, of a Broadway show tune, of course, would be called a Great American Songbook tune.
Yeah.
Elvin Jones was quoted as saying, "We played My Favorite Things for 20 minutes at least every night for over 365 days."
Wow.
Every night we had to play it, and every night
nobody gets tired of it. Right?
Everybody loved it, and it was like you must play that song if you're going to work here, and they played it every single night. And he said every night you never knew how it was going to go. It was always spectacular and always different and always fresh. And he never said we never got tired. We played it every single night, and it was always alive.
It's a classic for a reason, right?
Yeah. If you can make that happen, you're saying something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Just go ahead and try that. No, don't try that at home.
No. I certainly won't. All right, we got 6 and 5, Mike.
Okay, so 6, I turn back to the romantic side. And, people that hear Coltrane in his later years and compare that to Coltrane when he was with Monk or when he was doing his own group as a hard bopper in the late 50s. I keep going back to this. In 1962, he was going towards the avant-garde, yet this record is just pure raw emotion and joy, and a very, very laid back. This is Coltrane at his mellowest, and it's called Ballads with the classic quartet. And great music in here. The songs Say It Over and Over Again, You Don't Know What Love Is, Too Young to Go Steady, All or Nothing at All, I Wish I Knew, What's New, Easy to Remember, and Nancy with the Laughing Face. Fantastic and very, very popular album, especially with the casual listener who doesn't really get a lot of exposure or a lot of doesn't have a lot of experience listening to Coltrane. That's
and
I think casual fan.
Yeah, would you say, like, if you're kind of like a jazz newbie, that would be a perfect first-time recommend album to listen to?
Sure.
Coltrane, right? Like, I don't know if I would recommend, like, say, a Love Supreme to someone who's brand new to Coltrane and maybe doesn't even know that much about jazz. That's probably your best bet.
This is Coltrane in a more popular setting, let's say.
Yeah. It's called Ballads for a reason, guys. I mean,
Yep. So I picked that as number 6. Number 5. Okay, number 5. When Coltrane recorded for Atlantic Records, he also was just coming out of a contract with Prestige. He had also just left Miles Davis' band, and the years were 1959 and 1960. 1959, for example. Here are some of the greatest records of the modern jazz era that ever were produced were from that year. Of course, Kind of Blue, Miles Davis, #1 selling jazz record of all time. Time Out, Dave Brubeck. Mingus, of course, 1960, Giant Steps, Coltrane's landmark Revelation. So during that time period, Atlantic Records put Coltrane under contract as a leader, and he recorded 3 or 4 albums. So I picked, because I couldn't pick between, between My Favorite Things and all Atlantic Records, My Favorite Things, Coltrane Jazz, Giant Steps, of course, the landmark recording. But I picked this Atlantic reissue 2 LP set, and it's called The Art of John Coltrane, The Atlantic Years. The reason I picked this is because it's got all the best, as in my opinion, of those all those 3 years. Of course, it's got Giant Steps, Central Park West, Like Sunny, and Body and Soul. All tunes that Coltrane used as vehicles for his new reharmonization technique and his new compositional device, where he split the octave into perfect, rations of thirds, and he had 3 key centers, and there's a whole spiritual thing about the circle of fifths and how the notes are connected with 12 different notes in the hands of the clock, and the 8 notes of the scale to the corresponding planets and the astrophysiology. There's a whole big science about that.
Can you tell he's a jazz teacher? I can see he's already he's mapping it all out on a board. Right?
I mean, we could have a whole discussion just on Coltrane's philosophy and his concept of music theory and phrasing and patterns, and how to navigate through the realm of. But I know your listeners are not mostly theorists, so I'm not going to go there. But anyway, My Favorite Things is on here, the Giant Steps recordings, and also from one of my favorite Coltrane albums called Coltrane Jazz. I think I have it here. I'm going to include it with this, even though some of the songs are on here already. This is also my number 5, goes with that. Coltrane Jazz. This is the first record of Coltrane I ever heard. And I think I bought it when I was maybe 10, 11 years old. So we're talking about in the very, very early 1970s I found this record. And it's really a turning point in the language of Coltrane, in the way that he phrases his tunes. He's away from the plethora of a 1,000 notes a second here, and it's all really thought out, patternistic. So that's it's everything that he's practiced for the last 2 years. He's putting forth in here with a new twist on it, and again, it came out with 1959. This is the follow-up to Giant Steps, released by Atlantic. It was recorded in 59. So anyway,
cool.
That's Coltrane.
That album's been with you for a long time, right?
Yeah, most of them have.
You gotta love that, right?
Yep.
All right, my number 6. I'm going to go back to Impulse Records, 1963. Impressions, produced once again by Bob Thiele. Once again, and here this is like half live. It's probably 3/4 studio, the other quarter live. So we've got recordings from the Village Vanguard on here in New York City, and also from the studio, Rudy Van Gelder's studio in Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey. So recorded between 1961 and 1963. Eric Dolphy on clarinet and sax, McCoy Tyner on piano, Elvin Jones drums, Roy Haynes on drums, and Jimmy Garrison on double bass, as well as Reggie Workman on double bass. So you got this kind of like double rhythm team going on here. I tell you, Coltrane and Dolphy on India, incredible. I love Eric Dolphy. Mm-hmm. If anybody out there watching has a list of Eric Dolphy stuff, he's absolutely amazing. That's a 14-minute tour de force. Awesome. Up Against the Wall. It's got some great drumming on that. After the Rain, laid back, emotional, majestic. Impressions is just absolutely killer on here. This is really good. I think what works so well about here is that it combines like the furious live playing with the more relaxed and textured kind of studio material. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful album, and all these like impulse.
So what?
So what?
Impressions.
Oh yes.
I figured I'd throw that in there just to throw you off.
Why not? Yeah, I was like, what? So that's my number 6. Really good, though. Really, really good album.
Yeah.
And then at number 5, which I don't have a hard copy of, is he's got 2 albums that he released under the title Coltrane. One was much, much earlier on. I think his first ever album as a leader was self-titled Coltrane. Mm-hmm. But then he also released for Prestige, and then for Impulse, in '62 he released another album called Coltrane. Also produced by Bob Thiele. Also recorded at Rudy Van Gelder Studios in Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey. April and June 1962. Again, Elvin Jones, Macaulay Tyner, Jimmy Garrison is the band. Out of This World is really out of this world. Again, these great kickoff tracks. You got to have a track that pulls people in right off the bat. And I love the way Coltrane just takes the listener on a wild journey. You got Soul Eyes is really good on there. Miles' Mode is awesome. Swinging. I mean, this band could really swing when they really wanted to, which is really great. And Big Neck is really good. Up Against the Walls on here as well. Stellar album. Don't miss out on this one. 1962's Coltrane on Impulse Records. Back to you for number 4.
Very good. Very great. Okay, so this number 4, I included this on the basis of not only that it's one of his most popular albums at all, but if you've never looked at this, if you've never seen this, here is on vinyl. This is Coltrane's Letter to God on a double album inside. This is why CDs can't compare to vinyl, in my opinion, because holding this in your hand and looking at that photo and the size of it, it's like having a poster on your wall. Every time you listen to this, if you read what Coltrane wrote, he talks about his departure from the secular world of music until the spiritual world of music.
It's not even in my CD book. Like,
no, it's not even in there. I mean, this is a that's going to be worth something someday. And all the poem that he wrote and the letter with his own notes. As far as I know, it's the only album that he personally wrote the liner notes to. There's so many great people that wrote liner notes for him. But anyway, A Love Supreme, it is the pinnacle of, or the beginning of Coltrane. I wouldn't say it's the beginning, but it's the pinnacle of his spiritual journey and all the things that came after it. This was the one that marked a new direction for Coltrane in my mind. Sold more than 1 million copies by 1970. A Love Supreme, from December 9th, 1964. That's when it was recorded.
Worshipped by 2 guys named John McLaughlin and Carlos Santana. They even did a tribute album to this where the 2 of them played a lot of this stuff on guitar, right? So it's just highly influential.
We'll keep that one in the plastic.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Yeah, for number 3.
Okay, number 3 is my live album. This is called Coltraneology Volume 2. This is with McCoy Tyner, Jimmy Garrison on bass, and Elvin Jones. Again, the classic Coltrane quartet. And this was recorded live in Stockholm. John Coltrane plays soprano, tenor, and of course, this was recorded in 22nd of October, 1963. One of the reasons why I love this live performance is Coltrane takes about a 8-minute cadenza, a solo at the end of the song, I Want to Talk About You, which was written by Billy Eckstine in 1944, I believe. Okay, Billy Eckstine, a great singer. The same tune was made popular under a different title, based on the same chord changes, a different melody, but the same chord changes was made popular by Errol Garner in 1954, which that name of that tune is called Misty. So almost everybody has heard of the tune Misty. If you haven't, check it out. It's been done by everybody. Johnny Mathis probably made it most famous and whatever. But it was actually a song based on the song that Billy Eckstine wrote in 1944, and Coltrane absolutely goes crazy here with a 9-minute live cadenza by himself, just soloing so beautifully. If you ever wanted to transcribe, it's very attainable. You can transcribe it if you have knowledge of how to do that. I would suggest really studying what Coltrane does here, because it really is him pouring his heart out in a beautiful song. So that's
a great picture on the back too.
Yeah, that's a live recording. That's a very famous picture of Train. Yeah. So
cool.
Coltraneology. Yeah. Live from Sweden.
Number 3. What do you got?
Number 2. That was number 3.
Okay.
So number 2 is, I don't have a copy of that.
Oh, so you did 2 just then? Okay.
No, I did 3 just then. Coltraneology.
Okay.
So
you did Love Stream. Okay, got it. I got to catch up. Okay, all right, cool. Yeah. That's what I thought. All right, so let's go to another quasi-live studio album, Live at Birdland. 1964, Impulse Records, produced by Bob Thiele at Van Gelder Studios for the studio pieces, Live at Birdland in New York City, October 8th and November 18th, 1963, the record dates in the studio and live. Again, McCoy Tyner, Jimmy Garrison, Elvin Jones, and Coltrane. This is mandatory, in my opinion. This is so good. You got Afro Blue just kicks it off the album. Absolutely blistering. I Want to Talk About You, less improvisational than Afro Blue, but a little bit more melodic, no less impressive. Coltrane just doing those sheets of sound, that dizzying stuff that he does, just absolutely ridiculous. The Promise really swings. Alabama is just completely haunting, intoxicating. That's what I like about this live album so much, or live and studio album, is because from piece to piece on here, you get really different feels and a lot of nice variety on here. This is a amazing live and studio album that it makes it to number 4 for me. Absolutely love it. And then number 3, I'm going to go with Blue Train. Let's go to Blue Note Records. You know, it's amazing how he didn't work with Blue Note all that much. No. This is it, right?
That's it.
This is the only album, right? So
only one as a leader.
Yeah, only one as a leader. He Peter, of course, on other albums, but this one produced by Alfred Lyon, recorded September 15th, 1957 at Rudy Van Gelder Studios in Hackensack, New Jersey. Coltrane on tenor, Lee Morgan on trumpet. Lee Morgan, amazing. He also has great stuff as a leader too, folks. Curtis Fuller on trombone, Kenny Drew on piano, Paul Chambers on bass, and Philly Joe Jones on drums. So again, you can, we're basically talking about Coltrane today, but if we were to kind of talk about in future episodes about other notable musicians from this time period, you would hear some of these musicians I just mentioned playing on other albums, right? So he didn't work with them all that much, but this, again, we're talking 1957. So Philly Joe Jones.
Yeah, and Lee Morgan, what a great composer, and had a number 1 hit on the Billboard charts around that time period called Sidewinder.
Yes,
the Sidewinder.
Yeah.
That's the epitome of the soul jazz of hard bop. The funkiness of hard bop, I think, is right there in that album, and Coltrane, some of his finest compositions on that.
Yeah.
On that.
Yeah, I mean, you took the words out of my mouth. This is a great hard bop album. We haven't talked about that a lot today, but he is a marvel here, as is Morgan. So many great tracks on here. Moment's Notice just absolutely kills. I'm Old Fashioned. The title track is great. Mike's going to talk about this a little more in a second, so I'll leave it to him. But yeah, this is also mandatory. This is my number 3, Blue Train from 1958. Now, back to you. The top 2.
Top 2.
Here we go.
So for me, I don't have a copy of this on hand, but his 4th LP, released by Prestige Records, was released on October of 1958. There we go, 1958 again. Sorry about that, but it was recorded in February of 1958. So you see this period, 1957, 1958. After he had this revelation with Monk, because I guess he fell asleep on the bandstand a couple times because of his habit. He was under the influence of narcotics or whatever, and almost got fired from Monk, and he did get fired from Miles, and Miles took him back in like 58, 59, just when they were doing all those crazy recordings, and Miles was going a different direction. Miles came up with the modal playing. This is the same time period, so Coltrane just came freshly off a Revelation playing with Monk. Then he goes and plays with Miles. At the same time, he's writing his own stuff, and he's practicing, all these patterns and scales that he used in the harmonic. He's going in a different harmonic direction, and eventually, where he came up with the Coltrane pattern changes for Giant Steps and Body and Soul and But Not For Me and all those tunes that he reharmonized using his own formula of harmonic motion, right? But at the same time, he records Kind of Blue, and he records Giant Steps, and then he also he did the Blue Note recording. He's not under contract with Prestige anymore, but Prestige had so many recordings that he did that they kept offsetting his other. He's got Atlantic, he's got Miles, everywhere. he's got Giant Steps with Atlantic, he's got Miles with Blue Note, and then he's got his own Blue Note, and then he's got Prestige, all coming out over staggered 3 or 4 years, and he recorded them all already in like a 2-year time span. The same stuff's going on at the same time, which most people don't realize, that it's not like he recorded one of these in 63. No, Prestige had recordings of him from 1957.
They were sitting in the vaults,
right. They didn't release it until they wanted a piece of the Coltrane train.
Yeah. That's why you look at his discography and you're like, oh my God, but it's not like he did all this stuff in just a couple of years. I mean, you're talking about he was just recording constantly over the span of like a decade or thereabouts, right? Maybe a little bit more, actually. So, yeah.
And then with all the reissues, there's
it's still stuff coming out.
It's crazy. So anyway, number 2, Soul Train. It was his 4th release by Prestige. It was recorded in 58. And it featured this band: Red Garland, Paul Chambers, Art Taylor, and Coltrane. Now, those Paul Chambers and Red Garland were the same musicians, along with Philly Joe, that he was working with Miles. So again, it's the same bandmates, and he's going in his own direction or whatever. 2 tunes on here: Good Bait, I Want to Talk About You. One of his favorites at this time period, You Say You Care, Theme for Ernie, and Russian Lullaby. So, again, it's kind of like, to me, Hank Mobley released, what was the soul record? He called it Soul something. I can't think of the name right now. Hank Mobley. Help me out here.
I have a few Hank Mobleys at home, I'm drawing a blank.
Well, anyway, it had soul in the name. It was the hip thing to do, the Sidewinder and Soul Train. Somebody will correct me forgive me for not remembering the name of Hank Mobley's. Soul Station, there it is.
Yes.
Soul Station, Hank Mobley. So around this time in late 59, 60, 61, this was when all these really hard bop styles were coming around to the precursor, you could say, of what's going to become R&B in the 60s. A lot of heavy bluesy influences, a lot more listenable to the average listener than bebop or certainly hard bop was when it was first being put out there, turning into more of like the bluesy influenced soul kind of music again. So anyway, I picked that as number 2 for my Coltrane list.
I need to get that. Cool. All right, so I'll do my number 2 and then we'll reveal number 1. Okay. So my number 2 is, and again, I have it. I, for whatever reason, didn't bring it. Giant Steps from 1960. Atlantic Records. Giant Steps is amazing. I know for many people watching that may be number 1 for some people. I wouldn't deny that at all. Nasuhi Ertegun producing once again, recorded May 1959 at Atlantic Studios in New York City. Coltrane, tenor sax, Tommy Flanagan, Wynton Kelly, on piano, Paul Chambers on bass, Art Taylor and Jimmy Cobbs on drums, and again, Wynton Kelly and Jimmy Cobbs only play on Naima on that particular album. But yeah, I mean, killer post-bop music. The title track is just absolutely legendary. Cousin Mary is just great. Swings, Countdown, just blisters again. Those kind of sheets of notes. When I listen to Coltrane going berserk like that, I always use this term dizzying, because that's kind of what it reminds me. It's just so fast and just so like you just like, but it's amazing. Saida's song, flute, grooves and grooves and grooves. Naima is just a beautiful, beautiful track. Mr. PC in 1960.
Yeah, Paul Chambers.
Yeah, that's right. And that's a furious song. Really, really good. So I think it's an amazing album that, not for my number one, it would have been my number one. To me, 1 and 2 are just pretty much neck and neck. But yeah, that's my number 2. Giant Steps from 1960.
I'd like to comment on that too, is that Coltrane, with that, a lot of people say that it's very formulaic, but it's Coltrane exhibiting a brand new approach to harmony that was never heard before in such depth. Yes, there were references to some old standards like Have You Met Miss Jones, which uses similar chord progression in the bridge. There's also Tad Dameron composition called Lady Bird that has a similar turnaround at the end of that tune, using not the same, but a very similar chord progression. In fact, Coltrane referenced both of those tunes in some of the material that he reharmonized for the Giant Steps album, and also for a tune he wrote called Lazy Bird, which is based on Tad Dameron's Lady Bird. So he was onto something, but he figured out this formula where he practiced and practiced and practiced how to negotiate these new way of putting chord changes together at a blistering speed, using what is called a pentatonic pattern, which, if you think about the pentatonic scale, real simple, ba da dee da da dum bum. That's the opening line to Duke Ellington's "In a Sentimental Mood." That is actually the pentatonic scale, right? And it has African origins, based on scale degrees: 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 1. Right? Coltrane used 1, 2, 3, 5. It's since been known and well documented. That's called the pentatonic Coltrane pattern, and he uses that melodic fragment throughout these compositions and throughout his solos. But it's been thoroughly practiced, thought out, and revolutionized basically the way that many saxophone players approach the instrument since then. That Coltrane approach to patterns and using those melodic patterns in jazz has revolutionized the jazz education, and especially informal education, for the last half century plus. So that's why it's a landmark departure from everything. He didn't invent it; it was already there, but he found a new way to incorporate it into his music. Yeah. And as a compositional technique, as a composer, I think that was Coltrane's greatest gift, is that he found a way to take these mechanical patterns and play them in such a soulful, bluesy, almost crying way. The people call it like the angry tenor. It's just a raw emotion that he has, and this was his technique that he developed. And again, it's a whole school of musicians, and there's way too many to list right now. But among them, Michael Brecker and Jerry Bergonzi and Bob Berg, and so many of the new, the next generation followed Coltrane's. David Liebman came out of the 70s and 80s, followed Coltrane's approach at this period.
Yeah.
So, you have to also remember that during the late 1950s, jazz education in the secondary level in the colleges was just starting to take hold. And jazz was not, before 1955, considered an honorable genre. Jazz studies didn't exist until, University of North Texas, and then Berkeley School of Music and Indiana State University, some of the top three, Miami University. They developed programs based on this new style of playing, because it was teachable, it was accessible, it's based on a very simple principle, and of course nobody could match how well Coltrane executed that until years later. But anyway, that's just a little tidbit about the importance of giant steps in the canon of musical literature.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, our number ones. I don't know what you got.
You know what I have.
I know. I just noticed you're drinking out of a Druthers glass. Great
Of course.
I've only been to the one up in Saratoga.
That's where it came from.
Yeah, it's a great place. Yeah.
It's my favorite hang. If any of your fans want to come up to Saratoga and hang out in downtown at Druthers, I'll be there most days during July and August next summer.
Yeah?
That's where we hang.
Oh,
it's
okay.
a cool place, yeah. We go there often.
Eric Porter, if you're watching, Mike will be at Druthers. I know he lives in Saratoga. So
cool. Cool. All right, so my number one, Pete already mentioned it, Blue Train. Coltrane's only recording for as a leader for Blue Note Records, and we already went over the personnel.
Great album.
Yeah. Let me see here. Again, I think it came out in Did you have the date there? 1958 or 59? Released January 1st.
58, yeah.
In January of 1958.
Yeah, recorded September 15th, 1956.
And of course, I'm going to say my favorite comes from 1958. So.
Why not, right?
Right. Well, there is a reason why, but I won't go into that. Again, you have to go back to previous episodes where I talk about 1958 if you want to know why. Can't give away the house here.
Search them here on the channel, folks. We did, that was the Jazz Primer show, I believe. That's
Jazz Primer or one of the Miles things.
Miles shows, yeah. So.
Yeah. Okay. Done.
My number one shouldn't be a surprise. A Love Supreme, 1965, Impulse Records. Yeah, I mean, I will echo everything Mike said. This, to me, is very different from a lot of the other stuff that we talked about, but it's different in a good way, right? I think this was the beginning of a new career for him into, like you mentioned, more spiritual jazz. There's just some beautiful stuff on here, and, I've talked about this before because I included this in one of my favorite albums of the 60s show that we did a couple months ago. And it's just amazing. It's broken into like 4 parts. The whole thing is mandatory. Coltrane, Tyner, Garrison, and Jones. He would go on and do some kind of crazier shit after this, right? That's very avant-garde and almost free jazz, but this is where he decided to kind of say, all right, I'm going to kind of take what's kind of going on in my heart and in my head, and I'm going to kind of put it to music, and it really, really works well. John Coltrane saw the album length Suite of Love Supreme as his gift to God. The world has come to see it as a classic, not only Coltrane's best-known work, but one of the most important and influential jazz records ever made. Amen. So there you have it, everybody. Our favorite 10 John Coltrane albums as leader or as partner, right? Because Mike threw a couple. You know what was really great about this? We didn't overlap on much at all.
No, we didn't.
So, and we didn't plan this. I had no idea what Mike was picking or vice versa. So, we had a couple that really, did we pick anything the same other than Blue Train and Love Supreme?
Love Supreme and Blue Train. I think that's
right?
it. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, you didn't pick Giant Steps. So, we got a lot of good stuff.
I did mention Giant Steps.
You did, yeah. That's right, because it was in one of the other recordings. Yeah.
But I kind of left that open because I kind of felt that you were going to pick Giant Steps too.
Yeah,
so
I could not.
I put up the sequel,
There you go.
Jazz.
There you go. Yes, absolutely. So,
same techniques, same exploration.
Yeah. So hopefully we've got. Here's always the cool part of this. So hopefully, folks watching, we have some serious Coltrane fans watching. Let us know what your 10 favorite Coltrane albums are down in the comments below, because there's no shortage of stuff to choose from. Tons of stuff, and we didn't even get into his stuff that he appeared on, not as a leader, and there's a shit ton of that as well too. So so. Mike, it's really good time that we got finished when we did, because we are actually outside. And
and it's getting a little chilly.
I started to see the breath come out of your mouth, and I'm like, all right, we're and the sun has gone down, so it's like we started a little early today, kind of figuring that would be the case. So it is winter time. Well, not officially yet, but it is pretty much winter time here in the Hudson Valley. So my man, thank you so much. I can't tell you.
So great to have you back.
Yeah.
At my place.
There you go. Mike and I talked about a month or so ago, and because we both had a lot of stuff going on, and we there have been quite a few months where we hadn't seen each other or spoken, so we talked on the phone, and I've been bugging Mike to come back on the channel for probably 2 years now, and he said, you know what, I'm ready. It's like I'm at a time in my life where I think I can do this again, so I'm like, thank you. So because we had a lot of people ask.
Really?
Yes.
Thank you. That's very nice to hear.
Yes, I think a lot of people remember those cool shows we did at the brewery and
hopefully I just didn't scare them all away again.
No, I'm sure it'll be fine. We'll have Mike on again. It's like there's like so much jazz stuff we could talk about. So and I think Mike and I also discussed potentially seeing him on an episode of 4 Fusion Friday somewhere down the road, so he can kind of talk with us about some fusion albums that we are listening to, and then we're kind of like rating and stuff like that. So there's all sorts of cool stuff. Yeah. So we'll be seeing Mike again, and we may not be in here till the springtime, but I'll get him on a Zoom, or we'll have him over my house, or I'll go to his house. But we felt this would be cool to do it out here on the stage before it gets too cold and we can't do it for a few months. So anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, all together, all the damn time.
All the damn time.
Please subscribe if you haven't already, and click on that notification bell so you get alert of all of our content as it posts. And please do hit the like button before you leave. Coming up 1 week from today here on Ranking the Albums, a week from today, next Sunday, Rick Labonte, my buddy from Canada, will be coming onto the show. We're going to rank our top 10 albums of the Guess Who. I got to pick a Canadian to do the Guess Who with me, right? So Rick is the man for the job. So but we'll see Mike again soon. I'm going to talk to Mike off air about our next little assignment, and we'll bring it to you in due time. So take care, everybody. Got any last things to say?
One last thing. Please do check out the new release from Home at Last. That's the band I created with my family and with Bill Ware. My son is featured on lead vocals on many of the tunes, also Bill, and a lot of my sax playing is all over that record. So
it's not jazz, but it's kind of jazzy pop. If you like Steely Dan or like maybe late 70s Doobie Brothers, it's kind of like that. Very cool, good melodies, lots of great instrumentation, and just really catchy tunes. So, like I said, if you missed my review of it a month or so ago, just just search for Home at Last here on the channel, watch that, and then go to the Bandcamp page. There's links on that video as well. And if you're really, really interested in a vinyl copy,
it's 180 gram collector's edition vinyl, so it's top notch. It'll last you forever. It's really good.
If you're interested, just put a comment down in the comments below, or send me an email. You guys know what my email address is, and I'll put you in touch with Mike, and you guys can figure it all out. So anyway, cool. So thanks for watching, everybody. From Mike Antonelli, I am Pete Pardo. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you soon here on Sea of Tranquility.
Take care, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.